Hello and welcome back everyone to Adobe Live from the sofa here in the UK on Good Friday. Happy Friday everyone. Let me know what your plans are for today except for Adobe Live. Today we have Tony Harmer here with us again, and
Hello.
Tony is jumping into Photoshop. How are you, Tony?
I am very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Oh, and Rufus just
Rufus.
appeared. Rufus
Yep.
is here too.
Hi.
How are you, Rufus?
I just appeared. Hello, everyone. I'm good. Good.
Rufus, the Wizard of Florence. So you prepared a mandala?
I have. Yeah.
That looks like my succulent plant.
It does look like your succulent plant.
Every Friday we have botanics in this stream.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
every day, actually, Stephanie, because your background is full of and botanics. My botanics as well, right here. My lettuce and my basil and my tomatoes. Mm-hmm.
I had plants in here, but they didn't do very well, so Sharon took them back into the house.
Hey everyone! Hey Julia! Hey Jürgen! Hey Dee! Munia is here as well. Hi Munia! Akin! Wow, so many people here already on Good Friday. Yes, because everything is closed for real today. But Adobe Live is here. Adobe Live from the sofa. Yes, we decided we're going to be here on Good Friday. We're going to be here on Easter Monday. We're going to be here until it is necessary, because this is the only way to actually connect with the creative community. And I'm so glad that we started these streams exactly 2 weeks ago here with UK artists and UK inspiration for our friends in the UK. But I know that there's many people from around the world watching as well, because this is on the regular behance.net/live channel. And those of you who are watching it on YouTube, if you want to chat with us, come over to Behance. Okay, we're not looking at the chat in YouTube too much. So if you want to ask Tony questions and interact with us, come over to behance.net/live. And Tony was with us last week already on Friday, because Tony is our regular guest, our Friday guest. And last week was all about Adobe Illustrator. So if you missed that, the replays are available if you scroll down under this stream, not now, in about an hour when we're all done here, you can watch the replays. So don't worry about that. If you missed something, you can take notes. I've seen some people already taking out their notepads, which is very good. And well, over 100 people already here watching on Good Friday. It's beating Germany today, because Germany, wasn't that high. So I'm glad to see everybody here.
They can still go out. We can't.
Yeah, well, also really? They've got better chocolate. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't get it that, some countries they can go out, some countries, I can't go out. I've been in the house since April, like the month before April, March 8th. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, Fridays for Tony. That's right. Hi from Scotland. Hi Elliot. Hi from Florence, Italy. And Stephanie's in London, and Tony Harmer is in
Cambridge.
Yes,
just on the outside of Cambridge. Amazing.
Good. I think we should get started. Tony, this is your show. This is the Tony Show. Yep.
Thank you. Right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Julia. I know it's Julia in there early, which is really good. So this isn't the main thing that I'm doing, this mandala. This is actually an idea that my friend Dave Clayton gave me to do with something from one of their plugins. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a nice tip for right now, especially if you're somebody who's stuck indoors, maybe with some children who want some activities to do. And this is using Photoshop and the mirror drawing feature to draw a mandala, right? So I've basically got this grid here. And if I just zoom in on this just for a second, and all I'm doing here, which is easy on a tablet, slightly more challenging on with a mouse, but not impossible. I'm just adding small bits onto here, and you can see they're being reflected around. Now I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But you can
just a quick public service announcement, Tony, to our community here. If you're going to start doing these things, just beware that you will be doing it for hours.
I know, because it's really mindful.
So meditative and mindful, yeah. And you can go on forever. I love it.
Well, what you can do,
hypnotize us.
I'm going to hypnotize you with my crazy stuff. But what you can then do is you can print these out and give them. You can either color them in yourselves or give them to your kids to color in, or anybody there who fancies some time. Coloring is a great way to be mindful. It's a very good way to do it. Let me just show you how to make one of those. So I'm just going to create a new document here just quickly. I'll just use A4, which is the same size as my printer. All you need is a drawing tool active. So the brush tool is a good candidate for that. And up in the options bar at the top, you've got the symmetry drawing. That was what I meant, symmetry drawing options there. And I'm just going to choose Mandala and then decide how many segments you want, or 8 is a good number for that, I think, but you can do whatever you like. And then if you need to resize this grid, I'm just going to hold down the Option key here, or Alt key, to resize that, and then hit the tick to apply it at the top, or hit return to do that. You can then just go ahead and start drawing. So if I just zoom in just here, and I start off with something like a circle. I like to overdraw a little bit because it helps me to draw the other shapes. And then you start to think, go ahead and draw things with little points and add small details.
Can you see how I'm already like going?
I know. And if everybody wants to just email me their bank details.
Yeah. Now is a good time.
Now is a good time to do that. I'll be very mindful of what I do with that information. But you can see it's really easy to just go ahead and start doing something, even the process.
So Jonathan is asking, is there something similar in Illustrator as well? Yes, in Illustrator, you could actually do it with, you know, the appearance panel, right? And
you can. I don't think you can get these sort of lines of symmetry in Illustrator, but you can get bilateral symmetry, so side to side. And there's a layer style. So in the layer styles panel down at the bottom, you've got an option to add that, and it will apply it to a layer, and then you can draw that like that. The only way at the moment for symmetry drawing for something like this would be to use a plugin, such as the ones from Astute Graphics. They have one called Mirror Me, which does exactly this.
Yep.
Astute Graphics, yeah. Okay,
but we're in Photoshop now. So
yes, we are in Photoshop. Yes, absolutely. Anyway, that's how you do it, and carry on with that. I'm just going to remove that and get rid of it. And I have a nice blank document here. I can also close off that mandala there. I'll save that just in case I want to color it in later on. So what I thought I'd do today is make sort of a movie poster draft for a fictitious movie that I've been thinking about, set in some sort of post-apocalyptic world with, you know, with a search for something, and that's what I thought I'd do here. So it needs to be just a bit meaty, okay? And I'm going to build it with some things from Adobe stock, and we will look at a few different techniques as we go on the way. So there'll be something in there for photographers, something in there for concept artists, something in there for designers. I tried to create a mix of different techniques that we can use. So I'm going to drag in this element here from Adobe stock. This is going to be the sort of foundational part of what I'm going to do. And I'll just apply that. And then I'm going to just go ahead and select some of this landscape. I don't want all of this stuff at the back. I'm going to replace that. And there's a couple of different things I could try here. I could go ahead and choose select subject and see if that would work. Well, at the moment it thinks the lake is the subject, so I'm just going to dismiss that. I could also use the brand new, I've got something in the way there, the brand new object selection tool. That might help me. So if I wanted to go over these things here, these rocks, for example, then it could try and evaluate those with the help of Sensei. Yeah, that's not too bad. And actually, I'll build out the rest with the quick selection tool. So I'm just going to switch over to my tablet and just drag across some of this stuff. I think I actually deselected it just there, but I'm not too worried. So there we go. That is just about what I need for that. So I'm going to add a layer mask just there. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm focused on the mask and get a brush. I'll get a nice soft brush here. The lovely picture of you guys is right in my way.
Oh,
there we go. So let's move it out of the way. I do. I'm constantly moving it. It's going one side to the other side. It's like tennis. Anyway, I'm now going to just refine that slightly. There's a few things that I don't want in here. I'm going to need a larger brush. So here comes tip number 1. I'm going to hold down on the Mac, Option and Control. Okay, now on a Windows machine, this would be Alt, right, drag. And I'm just going to drag outwards to change my brush size like so. Now the bracket keys, I still use those sometimes, but this is a much quicker, more dynamic way to do it. You see, as I drag left to right, I change the size, and if I drag up and down, I can change the hardness. And you can modify that. If you don't want it to change the hardness, that's something you can do in the preferences, but that's the most common thing for me to want to do. I'm going to make sure I'm painting with black to conceal just here, and I'm just going to roughly just change that hardness there, make that just a bit harder and a bit smaller. I'm just going to roughly cut some of that out like so. Okay, so this foundational stuff will just take a minute or two and it will be done, and then we can move on to the other bits. I'm just going to wipe out a few of these bits along here. I think I'll leave those things just there. They're fine. And just cut a few things away there. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring in a sky behind the landscape here. So I've got one that I think might be a good candidate. I'm just going to drag that into the layers panel, into the place that I want it. Let me just zoom out a shade here. Here comes tip number 2. When I'm resizing, I very rarely use the actual handles on the corners here. What I do instead is I use the options bar at the top. Now, I also have my transformation point visible. That isn't visible by default anymore, so you have to go to the preferences to enable that. So if you go Photoshop and then into the preferences, you can get to that from there and enable that. I think it's in the... You have
to commit the changes you just did. Enter, and then
oh, that's right. Yeah, of course I can. Okay, I'll show that in a second. Okay, but what I use is this. If I hover over the W for width, you'll notice I get this icon. It's like a scrubby finger. I like to call it stapler accident finger because it looks like it's had an accident with a stapler. And when you see that, it means you can click and drag in the direction shown to change the values. So here, for example, you can see how fast I can quickly change those values. I mean, it took me 10 times longer to explain it than it did to actually do it.
Right.
You can see I can go straight, but I go straight the way out like so. Okay, and I know that because they're linked, the link icon here is active, then that's going to work just fine. So I'll just apply that. Let me just go into the preferences for a second. I think
Catherine is asking you, what workspace are you working in, or do you customize your workspaces?
I do customize my workspaces, but the one I'm using on this machine today is the Essentials workspace. That's the one I'm using. I've made a couple of small modifications. We'll have a look at those in a minute, perhaps. Let me just find the thingy here. So maybe it's in interface. No, it's not. I will find that in just a little while, I think.
I will find it.
I will find it. Or it will come to me in just a little while. Okay, so going back to this mask just here. Okay, I'm going to click on the mask to make it active. So this is for the landscape at the top. While the automated selection I've done has done a reasonable job, you can see that, as is typical with things like this, there is a small amount of fringing. Now, there's a couple of different ways I can go about getting rid of that. But one way that is very, very cool on masks is to use a filter. If you go to the filter menu and come down to Other at the bottom, you've got 2 commands here, Maximum, which will expand a mask, and Minimum, which will contract it. Now, I'm just going to leave that just at 1 pixel. Okay, you can see how you can just change that really easy. Let me just take that up quite a way. Okay, and then just take it down to 1. Hit OK, and I'll zoom in on that region just there. And you can see it's cured most of that fringing. There are a couple of bits that I could perhaps go in and treat afterwards, but as this is a rough or a draft, then I'll leave it as it is for the minute. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect those two things together, and I'm going to turn them into a smart object. Now, what I tend to do, okay, rather than going into a menu to convert it to a smart object, you can see there's no shortcut assigned there, is I actually assign a shortcut to it. And here's the one that I choose. I'm going to go ahead and edit my keyboard shortcuts. Okay, and that's in the same place on Windows and on a Mac in the edit menu. And I'm going to click this icon here, which allows me to create a new set. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'll call it Tony's Keys. Actually, I'm going to call it Ninja Keys. Yeah.
The Ninja Keys, because
Ninja Keys.
Many of you might not know, you know, Tony's the design ninja.
I am. Mm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can write to me and get swank stuff like this hologram sticker,
ooh,
badges and stuff like that. Badges that I've just flung down onto the floor. There we go. So there's a little badge just there, and lots of other things.
Patricia
anyway,
in the chat. Hi, Patricia.
Hey, Patricia. Right, let me just open up the file menu here. So this is the top level menu system, and if I come down to Save As, you can see that this has been assigned 2 shortcuts. So Shift Command S and Option Command S here. Right now, of course, they'll be slightly different on Windows, but why do you need 2? I don't need 2. The one I've always used is this one, Shift Command S. So what I tend to do is take this one away. Okay, so I basically clear that one, just hit delete just there. And then I make my way to the layer menu, like so, and it's quite a way down, I think, in the layer menu. Quite a way down. Wow, it really is a long way down. Wow, long. Smart object, convert to smart object, which we get to eventually. I'm now going to hold down Option and Command, of course, Alt, Control on Windows, and hit S. Now it tells me that it's already in use because it doesn't know that I've deleted the other one yet, but that will be removed from File, Save As if accepted, which is exactly what I want to do.
So wait, before you commit to that, Tony, yeah. I just want to point out the Summarize button, because this is so cool also in InDesign and Illustrator. If you click on it, basically what it does, it'll create a file. Do it, Tony.
I will do it now. I'm doing it. I'm doing it, Rufus. I'm doing it now. I think it comes out as a web page, doesn't it? So, oh, no, there you go. Okay. So let me just do it from there. And if I just bring that onto the screen.
This, for all users, I think it's super important to at least read through that once, you know, just to, there's so countless features that I've discovered just by reading through that, or like glimpsing through it and said, what the hell is that? And then finding out about a specific feature. And so this is super handy to have with you.
It is indeed. It's not consistent though between InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator. I think Illustrator and InDesign, create you a text file with the same sort of information, and also it's not called Summarize in those. They've got different. All 3 applications have a different name for it, but there you go. That's just the way it is. But yes, they all have something like that. So it's good advice that. Anyway, I have accepted that change. Okay, and what I need to do is just update that here by making sure that I save those changes and hit OK. I don't need to relaunch Photoshop, but you can see now Convert to Smart Object has my shortcut attached to it, which means I can just use it, and those 2 things are now together, okay, as a smart object. So what I want to do here is I want to change these. They're going to be all dramatic and red, right? A bit like Mordor from Lord of the Rings. So that's what I'm channeling right now is Mordor. Okay, and of
You're
course
channeling your inner Mordor.
My inner Mordor. That's worrying.
Yeah.
That's worrying, but yes, I am. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to try and do it in as few layers as possible. And I like to try and see how many things I can actually do in one layer. So let's see how I can get
Tony, can I ask you something? You know, that little lake in the middle?
Yeah.
Can you just punch it out? And
I'm going to get rid of it.
And have the clouds? Oh, okay.
I can do, but I'm going to get rid of it.
It kind of hurts my designer eye to see.
It hurts my eyes too.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to get there. Oh no, that's going to go.
All right. Okay.
It's going to go, but it's going to go in one layer.
Just put an Easter egg on top.
Oh no,
you won't see it anymore.
But I've already eaten them all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my favorite thing in Photoshop since the advent of layers, and that's the Camera Raw filter. Now, just for people who, when I say Camera Raw filter, they hear me just say Camera Raw and they stop listening at that point. I've made you this little GIF, right? Just so that you know, that it is actually a filter, right? So I'm actually talking about the Camera Raw filter. And now I can actually close that file up, which is really good. Right, perfect. And I can also dismiss the timeline because I don't need it. So back on the main program, I'll just move you back over here. Okay, what I'm going to do then is I could go to the filter menu and find Camera Raw. It has a shortcut, Shift Command A, Shift Control A. And in fact, I will do it that way. So the Camera Raw filter, like so. Now I'm going to tap F so we go full screen on the Camera Raw filter. Okay, now it's almost exactly the same as the Camera Raw interpreter, which is the thing that you bring raw files in to Photoshop. It's also very similar in many regards to Lightroom. So if you know a bit about Lightroom, then this will help you with that because you'll be familiar with it. And if you don't, learning a bit about this will help you with Lightroom. So it's a good thing to pick up. So first thing I want to do is do a bit of cleanup first of all and get rid of that lake just down here. Okay, and by the way, don't worry about the canvas extension that goes on here. That's normal for Camera Raw to do that. You just have to learn to ignore it. So up at the top here, I've got a range of tools. Okay, and I want to use this one, the spot removal tool. Now I can change the brush size with that either by using the bracket keys, or I can actually go ahead and use the size slider here on the right. So it's nice and easy for me to change that if I want to. I'm just going to paint this in. This is feathering quite a bit, like so. And then this area here is the source. Okay, so I can drag that away to somewhere else. I'm just going to take the feathering down quite a lot there. Okay, and you can see that's kind of getting there, I think. By the time I've done everything else that I want to do to it, you won't notice it was even there in the first place. And there's a couple of other small things I want to heal. So I'm just going to take the brush size down just a bit here, and I'm just going to dab into a couple of places. Let me just move you guys out of the way just for a minute. Maybe you want to dab just here. Quite why it thought the sky was a good candidate there, I don't know. But just dab in a few places. And each one of these is a separate heal that you can go back to and modify at any time. You'll see they're then represented by these dots, and you can just tap on a dot to reactivate that heal. And if you need to delete one, you can just tap on it and then just hit delete or backspace on your keyboard, and away it goes. So are your eyes slightly less offended now, Rufus?
Yes, thank you,
With the
Tony.
lake gone. There you go. So I told you it was going. Once I've done that, I'm going to go back to the hand tool at the top, and that takes me back to the main adjustments here. So this is going to be like Mordor, right? So it's going to be hot and unwelcoming. So I'm just going to go ahead and warm this up. So I'm just going to increase the color temperature just here. Okay, so I'm going towards yellow, which of course is warmer. And down in the tint, I'm going to push a bit of magenta in there as well. Now, as it's a film poster type thing, I've got license to go wacky. It's not the same constraints as I might have if I were a photographer. Let's just darken that down just a shade, make it maybe just a bit more contrasty. Come down here and use some dehaze. Yeah, so push a bit of that on. You might also notice, by the way, that I'm not clicking on the actual sliders, right? You don't need to here. You'll see if you hover over any of the words, you get stapler accident finger again, which means you can mouse down and drag. Now, there's a military saying which goes like this. The time taken to acquire a target is a function of the distance to and size of the target, which means the bigger it is and the closer you are to it, the more chance you have of doing something to it. And in fact, Stephanie, you're probably familiar with this kind of thing from the UX world, in that when you're creating UI as part of an experience, you need the target for the user to actually be large enough, especially on like devices and wherever, where they can actually hit it. They're not having to seek. And that's where this comes in really useful just here. Yeah. So you know the sort of thing I mean. So yeah, just remember that.
No one has fat fingers. We just have 2 small buttons.
There you go. But I mean, if I was hunting for that little thing all the time, that would be a real ache. I can also bring down things like the shadows, and I could kind of bring down the whites there and change all of that stuff. If you want to neutralize any slider, just double click on it. Okay, and it takes it back to neutral, which is in the middle. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm not going to do anything with the curves or sharpening. I'm going to go to the HSL adjustments here, so hue, saturation, and lightness. In the hue, I'm just going to push this just a bit towards red, just there. And in the saturation, I'm just going to make the reds just a shade more saturated. Oranges, I'm going to move the yellows down a bit, and greens like so. Then I'm going to go to this one, cross-processing, okay, or split toning as it's referred to here. And I'm going to dial in a couple of hues. So the first one for the highlights, I want those to be sort of towards orange, which is at 30 degrees. You don't need to know that. There's a slider that's got colours on it, but I'm just saying that orange is near 30 degrees, right, heading that sort of way anyway. And then for the shadows, I'm going to keep those quite red. So I'm going to go to about half of that, round about ballpark 15. And then I'm going to start to pump up the saturation for these. So if I go for the highlights first and start to increase that, you can see suddenly that's getting much more red in there. And I'll go ahead for the saturation here for the shadows. Now, I really am deliberately pushing this too far, okay, for the effect that I'm actually after. But you can see that it's nice and easy for me to make those changes, and it's all in one place. And at some point, somebody will ask me why I like this so much, but not for a minute, hopefully, because I've got just one other thing to do. I just want to bring in a little bit of darkness around here. So I'm going to go to the Effects tab here, and I'm going to pull the post-crop vignetting down to the left just a little bit. I don't want it to kind of totally lose any detail in these areas, but I'm also not worried about it having too much. And then I'm going to add a gradated adjustment. So at the toolbar at the top here, click and drag downwards like so. So this is an adjustment that calculates on top of the original set of adjustments, but it doesn't do it like adding a layer would in Photoshop, where it's a separate calculation. Camera Raw is actually taking into account the adjustments I've got beneath that, okay, and allowing it to add more onto it, okay, sensitively. So you'll see I've got a whole new set of adjustments here. I have used one recently, so I'm just going to reset the local correction setting. So that's just for this gradated adjustment. I'm going to drag down the exposure just there. In fact, I'll go all the way so you can see the gradient. So at the top here, green light, that's where the gradient, everything beyond that. So if I pull this down, you can see how that's applied completely above it. The red light down at the bottom here, well, not lights, but the red dot, everything beyond that, the adjustment doesn't take place at all. And the distance between, okay, is where where the transition between the two takes place, but you can see it's nice and easy for me to change that. It looks dramatic, doesn't it?
So there's a couple of questions here. Just
Yeah, Rob was asking which keyboard, which Vacuum or tablet you're using.
I am using the Cintiq 24 Touch just here at the minute. So I did have there's a 32 in the booth behind me and a 22 in the booth behind me, but this one's a 24 and it's the one on the arm. So I like to work standing up. So this one can stand and then I can just push it and it comes down, so I can work at it sitting down as well. So nice.
And Adrian is saying, hello. The original image is the Old Man of Storr on the Isle of Skye. It's very dramatic in many of the different sky settings you get naturally on Skye. Yep.
Fantastic.
But Tony here is making it even more dramatic because he's creating that otherworldly scene. I don't like the word post-apocalyptic, Tony, not now. So let's just say otherworldly, okay?
Do you know what? Actually, that's I'm sorry. That is a really good point. Yes, let's use that term. Anyway, I'm going to hit OK. So some people wonder.
Jesus Ramirez is in the chat. Hello.
Is he? Hello, my lord. Yeah. How are you?
Probably in Manchester, huh?
Yes. I watched his live stream last night. Actually, it was really good. Him and Glady. It's very good. But yes, now Jesus is probably going to expect me to do my pencil sketch technique on this. I'm not doing that today. So, but he's just now he owes Glady 10 quid. But anyway, people ask me why I like this technique so much, and there are reasons, and many, but mainly it's because of the editability. Yeah, I can go into this at any time, okay, and edit every aspect of what I'm doing here. In fact, if I just do that just for a second, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the actual smart object. So now I'm back into the thing with the 2 layers. Just here, I'm going to go to the thing in the background because the sky isn't really doing it for me just at the moment, or let's pretend it isn't. I'm going to replace it with another sky. So all I'm going to do is right click on this here and choose replace contents. I'm going to go to my library and choose this sky and then choose relink. And you can see how that's relinked straight away like so. If I now close this document or the smart object, okay, and save it, that updates inside of this file, yeah, and all of the things that I've applied to it are still there. If I needed to go ahead and change anything, I simply double click on the filter, okay, and then go to whatever aspect I want to change. So let's just say I wanted to step off that gradient a bit. I'll click on the graduated filter. And you'll notice that that wasn't showing a moment ago. It's only when you're working with the tool. Reactivate it and maybe just step off that exposure just a bit, like so. There you are. Infinitely.
And you're going to saying the skies are actually blue and like have you guys been outside recently? I mean, you're okay.
I thought you wanted me to sing. I thought you said sing. Oh, my bad. I was going to sing because it's infinitely editable. Sorry, Rufus. I thought you said sing.
I wasn't expecting that. No, I was just talking about the incredible blue skies, you know, with no jet streams and things, and
yeah, it's
incredible. Yeah,
animals are recovering, wildlife's recovering. Fantastic. Just shows, you know, what we do, really, doesn't it? It's worth thinking about. Anyway, right. So I've got the basis for my landscape just here, okay, with the camera raw filter on. By the way, something else you can do with these, which I'll do later on, is change the way, okay, that the filters here applied to a smart object blend. And the key to all of this is actually in the smart object. So let's go ahead and get something else in here. So I've got another image from Adobe Stock just here. Now that looks like a place to be, doesn't it? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use select subject and let Sensei work out what the subject is. Okay, and it's done that. I'm just going to tap Q on my keyboard just for a second to go into quick mask mode so you can see what it's returned as a selection. It's not bad, is it? Really, not bad.
Pretty amazing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Incredible stuff. There's a few areas that could do with a bit of extra work in here, and of course I've got other tools that I could use to resolve that stuff. But what I'm going to do just for the minute is go to select a mask. Okay, like so. Now I'll just increase the transparency here just for a minute. I'll actually decrease it.
Yeah, so Tony, you've started something. People want you to sing again. So, you know, before the end of the show and for all coming shows, you will have to sing.
I'll open next time with lava.
Okay.
Yeah, we should do that. There should be more singing. That should be a qualifier for you to actually do it. Now, let me just make sure that I am in the right view mode here. So that's onion skin at the moment, so I can see the content behind. I'm just wondering if white would be more useful. Not really. So I'll stick with the onion skin that I had, but it's good to have choices. So a couple of things I might want to do here. I might want to tighten this up a little bit, and I tend to do that by just adding just a little bit of contrast to start off with, and then switching out to my brushing tools. So on the left-hand side, I've got a range of tools here. I've got like a quick selection tool, then I've got like a feather selection tool, and then just a straightforward painting tool. And I'm just going to brush in just a couple of places. And as Jesus would tell you, if you don't check it out, if you haven't checked it out before, by the way, you should check out his things on the Photoshop training channel on YouTube. He has amazing tutorials on there, but he's especially good with selection and using select and mask. He's got some great tips for doing that. Tips on selecting fine hair, or how to deal with fine hair to be more accurate, perhaps. As in, people often try and over select more than they need, right? And there are other ways to achieve it. Anyway, I can basically go on. Sorry.
Can Tony record the Adobe Live opening theme song? He could show how this.
Who's asking for that?
Yeah, that's what
that's Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus wrote that.
Fabulous. I'm just going to switch out to the quick selection tool. I'm going to hold down the option key and just brush into this piece just here. I think I'm going to have to kind of boost that contrast just a bit there and feather that out just a shade. I think I might also have to shift the edge just slightly.
Actually, people are asking if this was a ukulele. Or if it was a guitar.
No, it's a ukulele. I've got guitars, but they're down in the house. But that ukulele is in here. So
what else do you have in the house? You have cats, you have guitars.
Drums.
Okay.
I haven't got drums, really. There's a cajon just there, but no drums.
Well,
anyway,
one thing you don't know, Stephanie, is that if you walk out of the house where Tony lives, it looks just like the Lord of the Rings. He's like in the, he's in one of the little huts in the side of the hill. Yeah.
I can't visit at the moment. We got a letter from our Prime Minister, but
okay.
maybe later this year.
Oh man, I should have got that to return a mask for me, but anyway, not to worry.
Why did you not take a picture in front of your house instead of taking this from Adobe stock?
Because Sauron's out the front at the minute, and it always spoils the view, really. Yeah, it's not what we really need just at the minute.
Okay.
It's not quite there. Right, let me just move that across. So I'm going to get my selection tool and just move that over just around about there. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of the thirds here for this. Okay, so that's where I want that to sit. Now, of course, the colors there don't quite match what's going on in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the camera raw filter here. Now there's a small icon for it just at the side there. I'm going to hold down the option key and drag that onto that layer, and you can see that it's applied that. Now it's applied it too much, right? It's not exactly what I want for this, but I could try a couple of experiments here just to see if I can rein it in just a little bit. So the first one I could try is, and I do this a different way, by the way, every time. This isn't the prescribed way I do it. I do it in a number of different ways. But I'm just going to go on to the blending options just there. So the first thing I might try is just dial down the opacity a little bit, just there. It's sort of all right. I don't want it to be too far away from the landscape, but I don't want it to be this close either. So bring the opacity down. I might also change the blending just there. So if I go for soft light and then model the opacity, yeah, and eventually going through all of those different permutations, I'd arrive with something that's okay. Now, if I was doing this for a reels, I would need to take particular attention to those things, pay particular attention to those things. And I think it was when you were talking earlier on in the week, who were you talking? Was it Will you were talking to? No, Glyn. When you were talking to Glyn Dewis the other day, we were talking about values and if it doesn't work in black and white. And if you remember, Stephanie, you were saying about do the same thing with UX. Rufus, you were talking about that. What I could do here is add a black and white layer. Okay, so a black and white adjustment layer just at the top here. I don't need to do anything to tune it, but this would be a good thing that I could turn on and off just to see if that works. Now, at the moment, I think that at the very least could do with just a bit more lighting in this sort of region here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new layer just here. So just add a brand new layer. Okay. And then I'm going to clip that to the layer underneath. So I'm going to hold down the Option key there between the two and click. So now this is clipped to that layer. I'm going to get my brush just here and I'll make that slightly larger. So I'm just holding down those two things and I'm going to go for super soft. And then I'm just going to sample up a bit of this color, something around about there, I think, and brush that in like so. Now, at the moment, you might think that looks really, really dreadful, which it does, but that's fine. I can live with it. Just going to brush in like that. And maybe I'd work around all the edges where the light is going to strike, and I'd remove other parts. But let me just do this very, very roughly. And then I'll double click on the layer here. And what I'm going to do is use the blending inside the blending options to change this. I'm going to turn off transparency shapes layer just there. And I'm just going to drop down the fill opacity here. And then on the underlying layer, let's just move that so it's only striking the shadows. And once you get to a certain point, like round about there maybe, hold down the Alt or Option key and split those just to separate those out. And there's still work to do, but you can see that I have now got some light around the bridge of the nose and the forehead and also striking into this cheek. Again, that's all editable. I can just go ahead and paint and remove as I need to do that. So that, let's just for argument's say that at the minute is working. Let's have a look at the time. Oh, we're good, we're good, we're good, we're good. Let me go ahead.
Yesterday on the German stream that we do, the daily German streams, von dem Sofa, Lasse was working with a really cool plugin called Infinite Texture Panel.
I haven't got
Have you ever checked that out?
No, but I will do.
Check it out. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Like to add whatever kind of texture, like it's got artificial intelligence in it. It'll look at your pictures. It'll decide, what other elements you could pull in there. In this case, maybe a planet or maybe some dust, like flying around.
Yeah. I mean, I use so many things you can get to extend these things. I use the Topaz plugins a lot for a lot of the things I do. They have a thing called Remix, which I use a lot. Just to get AI informed and AI generated remixes of colors and shadows and all sorts of crazy stuff. Right. So what could this person be searching for in this world? And I think it's probably going to be the most valuable commodity in in our world at the minute, which is this. So I'm just going to resize this one down. Like, so, oops, Daisy went too far, went the other
You
way.
see, this is why I love doing these streams from the UK, because of the sense of humor, Tony.
That's Rufus code for we'll have a chat after this.
There's also humor in the chat. A lot of people are asking about your backyard, Tony. Jesus is asking if you have ruins or an old castle in your backyard.
I do, yeah.
And Catherine is saying that you have a folly in your garden.
I don't have a folly.
Okay.
No, but we have got a ruined castle, yeah.
Okay, so
it's not in my yard. It's on the other side of the fence from the studio, but yeah.
Cool.
We do. Yeah.
I have St. Paul's Cathedral down there. That's it.
Then nothing like my house.
and the London Wall is also just down the road. So yeah, that's the city of London. Hafisa is asking, could you recommend any beginners tutorials that I can use to improve my Adobe Photoshop skills?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the Learn panel directly inside of Photoshop for a start. Okay, so
I think that's the best way to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So just go to Window, Learn, and then work through the tutorials there. Some of them have accompanying files, right, Rufus, that you can go through and work with. So if you get your fundamentals right in any of these applications, yeah, then the rest of the applications kind of open themselves up to you. You get more from them. Fundamentals are key. So I would stick with doing that to start off with. Then when you're comfortable with things in there, I would start looking at Jesus's channel. Jesus has got a great resource there. Of course, there's other things, more pathway-led things, such as things on the platform I'm on, LinkedIn Learning, and formerly Lind.com and those things, and there are lots of others as well. So yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Let me just deselect the toilet roll from just there just for a minute. So what I'm going to do here is I am using this fab new selection tool here, the object selection tool, which I can work in a couple of modes. So I can use it as a lasso or a rectangle. The lasso is sometimes more helpful when you've got irregular objects with a busy background. But this one here, I can just drag a rectangle around that like so. It just kind of gives the algorithm and Sensei an idea of exactly where to look for what it thinks the subject is. Okay, so it finds them from there. That's just perfect. Now, I don't actually want to mask this one off, so I'm just going to cut that to the clipboard or copy it to the clipboard. Okay, and then just paste one down. Okay, so I've got my own loo roll just there, my own loo roll, my personal loo roll. I'm having a beautiful moment, and that should make somebody laugh. There you go. So get my selection tool. Let's move this up into this region here and also down in the stack, just around about there. Now, something else I could do here, because I want this to be more sort of blowing in the wind, I think, is I'm going to clone out some of this. So I'll just rotate this one around just for the moment. So I'm just going to transform
maybe you could also answer Jonathan's question. He's asking, is there anything you can do which helps to alter the direction of the lightning? Because we have two different directions at the moment.
But you know, we do. And actually, yeah, there is. Because what I can do is, because this smart object, which is, as I said earlier, infinitely editable. Oh dear. As I said earlier, it's infinitely editable. So I can just go into here. I can then go into the sky, which I can free transform. Okay, right click that, choose flip horizontal, like so. That was a good spot there, by the way, Jonathan. Very, very good spot. I'm just going to bring that across because I don't want all of that shadow to conflict too much with the stones that are there. Okay, then I can close that and save it like so, and you can see how it sorts itself out between the two. So excellent, good spot. And that actually is a key thing. We're doing that here, by the way. I was going for more reflected light.
Yes, because the shadows on the hills are coming from left to right, and the shadow on her is coming from right to left. And this is tip number
211.
2011 on Tony's show is that when you select the images to make your photo composition, make sure the light source comes from the same side.
Oh, and you see, I can't do that now because I had the mask thing. But anyway, not to worry. Let me just come out of there. But for now, just for this piece of fun, this will teach me for focusing on the toilet roll, won't it? And the toilet roll gags. So what I'm going to do is get the clone stamp tool. I'm also going to get my clone source panel out just here because it's very useful. Now, there are shortcut keys that you can use on British and Northern American keyboards. I'm not quite sure about German keyboards, and definitely Nordic keyboards, don't really know. But there are shortcuts you can use to change some of these fields. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, make my brush just a bit bigger here so it'll be easier for you to see the result. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and come along and click my source just there like so. And if I move away, you can see that preview. Okay, now Alt and Shift are the key combinations here to, or the main key combinations to change things. So if I hold down Alt and Shift or Option Shift here, I can use my left, right, up and down arrows to change the source point. So if I needed to modify the source, I can also use the comma and period keys, okay, to change the size, and the bracket keys to change the rotation. Actually, that's the other way around. So the bracket keys to change the size, okay, and the period and comma keys to change the rotation. So as it happens, I'm just going to use stapler accident finger just here, just to take that around a bit more like so. Okay, so then I'll start painting. So I'm just going to paint out like this. I don't have to worry too much about this being accurate because I'm going to brush this down. Let me change the scaling here as well. I want it to get smaller. Just there. Okay.
And the community is actually saving you because, like Steve says, no, wait, who said that? Oh, yeah, Robert says, we could have two suns. Yes, because on that other planet, there are two suns, Rufus. Duh.
Nice one. Private message me on Twitter. You're getting a sticker. You see, I've completely lost my thread on there. I'm making a right mess of that. But anyway, not to worry too much. I'm not desperately bothered about that. So I'm working quick.
Caroline is saying she's winning at social distancing.
Winning at social distancing. I like it. So typically, I would stretch that out just a little way, and I would also erase some of the edge here, which I could actually do, strangely enough, with a brush tool. If I get a nice, so many of Kyle's brushes in here, it's so good. Let's have a look at what I've got. I want something kind of dry media-ish, I think, and something a bit gritty. Let's use the chunky charcoal. Okay, but instead of just painting with it, so if I paint normally with it, it makes painty stuff like that. If you hold down the tilde key on the keyboard, just with the back tick, the bottom left of a UK keyboard, I think it's up on the top on a US keyboard, I could just come along and erase some of that, and it uses the same brush tip shape. Like so, how about that? So I've got a nice rough edge. Just like to zoom in a bit so it's easier for you to see. Nice rough edge on there. I'm going to switch back to just a regular, let's say regular brush at the top there, and again hold down those two keys. Let's just soften that off a little bit as well. So the two keys that I'm holding down there, Control, oops-a-daisy, and Option, and hold down the tilde keys, just remove some of that stuff because there wouldn't be any floaty particles out there. I'm just going to brush in just loosely and brush across this like so. Obviously, if I was doing this for reels, I'd spend a little bit more time doing it, but for now, it's just fine. Then I want to animate that just a little bit. I don't mean make it actually move. I just want to kind of suggest more animation. And for that, I'm going to use the puppet warp. Okay, and I don't want to see the mesh, so I'll just turn that off for a minute. Then just come along and add some pins at a few places, and I need something just about here to stabilize that, and then come along and get a bit more wobble going on there. So just around about that is just fine. I think that'll be
epic.
Yeah, that's a more interesting shape. Then I'll apply that. Now I can rotate this back around now. Okay, into position. So let's just get that down around about there. I do actually want that little spike. Let's just zoom in for you. The little spike I'm talking about is just there. Use my arrow keys to nudge that into place. Perfect. I can then go back to my mask here and brush that out. So just brush out this little piece just here.
Angela is asking, what was the key to erase?
The tilde key. So it's the one that looks like a sort of a wobbly line, like the Enya from the top of Spanish ends and other characters.
Next to shift.
Next to shift.
No, she was asking to switch from drawing to erasing with the same brush.
Yeah, so just the tilde key. Hold down the tilde key, and that's it.
All right.
Yeah, and it is next to shift on a UK keyboard. So I might do that. I might also, let me see how we're doing. Well, we're kind of running out of, the sands of time are running out a little bit. But what I might do here, I could also add a bit of the blur gallery and add a path blur along that. That would be a thing to do. I could also then go ahead and smart object this. Remember, I created a shortcut for doing that, and I could come along and maybe change some tones. But an old school technique for quickly bringing these things together, okay, is to create using the claw shortcut. So that's the shortcut that involves 4 fingers to do. So it's Shift, Option, Command.
Tony,
shift,
like looking at it that way, it really looks like a huge. It is not a kitchen paper roll. Like it looks huge.
In this fantasy world, you get what you can get.
Okay.
It does look huge. It's the size of a head. But you know, it's that's the way it is. It's Costco value. So I'm just going to create a new composite of all of those things together, right? So I use the claw shortcut, which is Shift Alt Command E, Shift Option Command E, Shift Alt Control E as well to do that. So you can see I've got a composite layer here with all of those things. I then go ahead and go to the filter menu, come down to blur and choose average. Okay, so I get a nice solid color like this. Okay, and then I'd use something maybe like overlay just there, and you might need to model down the opacity a little bit to get that to fit. So depends, blending mode. Sometimes color works pretty well for color. If you want to do it properly, then of course you create things like saturation layer, luminance layer, and a few other things besides. But that can actually be done on a single layer as well. So if I just get rid of this one just for a moment, if I just delete that out, okay, so let me delete layer 3 just there. I'm going to get all of these things and turn them into a smart object. So I am cheating just a little bit there. And then if I go to the filter menu, you can see I can actually add average as a smart filter and then use the controls just here, okay, to change that and the opacity downwards like so. The only other thing I might do is add a neutral layer to kind of add some toning into the toilet roll to make it look a little bit more like a toilet roll. Let me just bring my plan diagram on from here. So something a little bit more like that. That's what it looks like with the path blur and so on. So might do something like that just there. And the only other thing, just to finish this off, just so it's done, is to add on this graphic here for the title of the movie, right? Roll Quest. I worry about myself sometimes, man.
Yeah, I worry too, Tony. but you know, like it's all fun and games. But thank you for reminding us of of our possible future here. But
what, hunting for loo rolls in this fantasy world?
Well,
I just thought,
apparently that's only in the countries up north. Here in Italy, this is absolutely not an issue.
No,
people don't hoard. People don't hoard toilet paper rolls.
No,
it sounds like it's a thing in Germany and the UK. I don't know. It's weird.
It is weird. I just thought I'd do something that perhaps had a little bit more humor and energy into it, because I think that's what we need more than anything else at the moment.
This is exactly what we needed for this Car Friday, Tony. This was awesome. And I love the font you have there. It makes it look very like Mad Maxy and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's that's called Runcible Cleft.
I like where this is going, but let's just start over.
Okay.
Hovering art director. But that's it. We're done.
We're done.
Yes.
Tony, again,
yes,
thank you so much for
welcome.
Insight in your Photoshop tips and tricks this time. Last week, Tony was with us with some Illustrator magic. And next week, what are we going to be talking about, Tony?
InDesign.
InDesign, I know, is something that everybody always wants to learn more about. So next Friday, we will be back with Tony. And and just so that you know, on Monday, Easter Monday, we're going to be together with Radim Malinic from London, from Brand New, and he's going to be talking about his career, his art direction, and of course his books that he's writing.
I love Radim.
So it's going to be super cool.
Yeah, he's amazing. Rad is
Stephanie, how are you getting ready for the weekend?
I need to do some work and record my tutorials for students. So, yeah.
All right. It's not like we have anywhere to go anyway. So
exactly. I had to cancel. I had to cancel my hairdresser's appointment, my manicure pedicure appointment, just for this stream, so that I'm here with you. But no.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. And I will be seeing you on Monday again. And of course, here the community in the chat, you are awesome. Like so many people came on this holiday, and this really makes me feel like this is the right way to go. We started these Adobe Lives from the sofa 2 weeks ago, and I'm super excited that we're going to continue doing those as long as it takes. And it's a really cool way to stay together with the community and see some real nice talent from the UK over these next few weeks. So thanks for joining. And Tony, I'll see you next Friday. And
yes,
Stephanie,
see you later.
See you later. Happy Easter, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye. Happy
Easter. Bye.
Bye.